Your brain can react to danger before you even realize that danger exists. That means that sometimes the body goes into alert. Even when everything seems normal, your heart speeds up, your breathing changes, your muscles tighten, your mind begins to monitor, and an uncomfortable feeling appears, as if something were wrong, as if you were losing control. But there is an important scientific explanation for this. You are not losing control. Your brain is trying to protect you. There is a fundamental concept in neuroscience that helps explain this phenomenon. This concept is called neuroception. Neuroception is the nervous system's ability to detect signals of danger or safety before the conscious mind becomes aware. It is an automatic process, silent, invisible, and extremely fast, much faster than thought. Notice something interesting. Before you perceive a risk, your body has already started reacting. Before you understand a situation, your system has already begun preparing. That happens because the brain was designed to prioritize protection. Not comfort, not logic, not calm, protection. Now think about a simple situation. You walk into a new environment. Everything looks normal, but there is a strange feeling, a slight tension, a small sense of uneasiness. Nothing happened. No one said anything. No visible danger, and yet your body stays alert. That type of reaction is not imagination. It is not exaggeration. It is not weakness. It is neuroception. The nervous system detects microsignals, facial expressions, tone of voice, body posture, movement, environment, memory, history. These signals are processed automatically, without effort, without decision, without awareness. And based on those signals, the body chooses a response: relax, prepare, or protect. This mechanism was essential for human survival. For thousands of years, reacting quickly meant staying alive. Delaying reaction meant risk. That is why the brain developed extremely sensitive systems that prioritize safety, even when danger is not clear, even when the threat is not real, even when the environment is safe. Now notice something many people experience: a sudden tension, a sense of alertness, an unexplained uneasiness, an internal discomfort. This can happen in a quiet environment, during a conversation, before making a decision, or even without any apparent reason. And that creates a common question: why do I feel this way? The answer is often simple. Your brain is trying to protect you, not because danger exists, but because possibility exists, and possibility alone is enough to activate vigilance. This process happens outside awareness. The nervous system does not wait for confirmation. It reacts first and asks questions later. That sequence may seem exaggerated, but it is extremely efficient. Because the brain's main objective is not to make you feel comfortable. The main objective is to keep you safe. Now consider an important detail. Protection does not mean real threat. Protection means preparation. Preparation means vigilance, and vigilance requires energy. That is why when the brain enters protection mode, the body consumes more energy, the mind becomes more active, attention increases, the senses become sharper. This state can be useful in dangerous situations, but it can become exhausting when it lasts too long, especially when danger does not exist. Now imagine a system that learned, over time, to stay alert. A system that went through periods of pressure, responsibility, uncertainty, demand. That system develops a pattern of vigilance, a pattern of protection, a pattern of monitoring. Even when life becomes stable, even when the environment becomes safe, even when risk decreases, the brain remains prepared. Because it learned that preparation prevents surprise, and preventing surprise increases safety. This explains why some people feel tense in situations that appear normal, not because danger exists, but because the system learned to anticipate danger. That learning happens through experience, through repetition, through adaptation. Now notice something fundamental. The brain does not need a dramatic event to learn vigilance. Small repeated experiences are enough. Constant pressure, high responsibility, unpredictable environments, frequent change. These factors train the nervous system, train the body, train the mind, train attention. And over time, that training becomes habit. A habit of protection, a habit of monitoring, a habit of anticipation. Now consider an important question. If the brain reacts before consciousness, how do we know it is trying to protect? The answer is found in the signals. A faster heartbeat, shorter breathing, muscle tension, a sense of alertness, difficulty relaxing. These signals indicate activation, and activation indicates preparation. That pattern does not mean failure. It means functioning. It means adaptation. It means survival. But there is a detail that changes everything. When the system remains in protection mode for too long, the body becomes tired, the mind becomes worn down, energy decreases, and the feeling of losing control appears. But what feels like loss of control is often excess protection, and that leads us to an important understanding. You are not losing control. Your brain is trying to protect you. And when you understand this, something changes, because the sensation stops feeling like threat and starts feeling like information. See if this has ever happened to you. You're in a place that seems calm. Nothing wrong has happened. No one said anything concerning. But your body does not relax. There is a subtle tension, a quiet attention, a sense that something needs to be monitored. That does not mean you are imagining things, and it does not mean you have lost control. It means the system is monitoring. That monitoring happens automatically, without decision, without intention, without awareness. It is the result of an ancient mechanism, a mechanism that evolved to protect. Notice that the human brain does not work only with facts. It works with probabilities. It calculates risk. It estimates scenarios. It anticipates possibilities. This calculation happens all the time, even when you do not notice, even when you are resting, even when you are in silence. Now think about something simple. If you have gone through a difficult situation, the brain records that experience. If you have faced pressure, the brain learns from that pressure. If you have needed to stay alert, the brain memorizes that necessity. And when it encounters a similar context, it activates protection, not because danger returned, but because memory recognized a pattern. That recognition is fast, very fast, faster than thought, faster than logic, faster than awareness. And that explains why sometimes the body reacts before the mind understands. You feel first, then you interpret. This process is natural, automatic, biological. Now notice something that completely changes the perspective. The brain is not trying to predict the future with precision. It is trying to avoid surprise. Because surprise represents risk, and risk requires preparation. This principle appears across many areas of science, in biology, in psychology, in neuroscience, even in preventive medicine. The organism functions better when it can anticipate, when it can prepare, when it can react quickly. This functioning saves lives, but it can also create wear when it becomes constant, especially when danger is not present. Now consider an essential detail. The body does not perfectly distinguish between real threat and perceived threat. If something feels dangerous, the system reacts, even when, rationally, you know you are safe. That happens because the part of the brain responsible for protection works before the part responsible for logic. First comes the reaction, then comes the interpretation. This sequence is known in neuroscience as the rapid survival response, a mechanism that prioritizes safety, always. Now imagine a system that spent years learning to protect itself, learning to anticipate, learning to monitor. That system becomes efficient, sensitive, vigilant, but also tired. Because vigilance consumes energy, protection requires effort. Prolonged attention creates wear, and that wear appears silently. Constant fatigue, difficulty relaxing, a sense of tension, an active mind, a restless body. These signals do not indicate weakness. They indicate continuous functioning, prolonged functioning, functioning without sufficient pause. Now notice something important. The more the brain tries to protect, the more it observes. The more it observes, The more it analyzes, the more it analyzes, the more energy it consumes. This cycle can repeat for a long time, especially in responsible people, attentive people, careful people, committed people, people who need to anticipate, who need to solve, who need to avoid mistakes. That profile develops an efficient protection system, but also a more active one, more vigilant, more demanding. And that creates a common feeling, the feeling of being constantly alert, even when there is no danger. Now consider a question many people ask. Why can't I relax? The answer is often not lack of rest. It is excess protection. The system keeps monitoring, keeps evaluating, keeps preparing, because it believes that doing so maintains safety. And in many cases, that strategy worked in the past. It worked during difficult moments. It worked during periods of pressure. It worked in situations of responsibility. That is why the brain keeps using that pattern. Even when the situation has changed, even when the environment has become safe, even when risk has decreased. Now notice something essential. The brain does not change behavior just because logic changes. It changes behavior when experience changes, when repetition changes, when perception changes. That means the system needs to recognize safety, needs to feel predictability, needs to perceive stability. Without those signals, it continues protecting, even without threat. Now think about something interesting. Have you ever noticed that some people feel uncomfortable in moments of calm? Everything is quiet. Everything is still. Everything is under control. But there is internal restlessness, a sense of alertness, difficulty relaxing. That happens because the system is not used to calm. It is used to preparation. It is used to vigilance. It is used to movement. When calm appears, the brain becomes suspicious. It tries to find risk. It tries to detect problems. It tries to anticipate change. That behavior is not a defect. It is adaptation. An adaptation that was useful, but that can remain active for too long. Now consider a fundamental point. Prolonged protection creates exhaustion. Exhaustion creates irritability. Irritability creates tension. Tension creates vigilance. And vigilance creates more protection. This cycle can become continuous, silent, automatic, and often invisible, until the body begins to signal persistent fatigue, a sense of overload, difficulty relaxing, a racing mind, light sleep. These signals are not enemies. They are messages. Messages from a system that has been working for too long, without enough pause. Now notice the turning point. You are not losing control. You are trying to protect yourself. This shift in interpretation transforms the experience. What seemed like failure becomes effort. What seemed like a problem becomes protection. What seemed like weakness becomes responsibility. And that understanding reduces guilt, reduces fear, reduces frustration, because it brings clarity, and clarity brings safety, and safety allows relaxation. Perhaps the most important realization of all is this. Your brain is not exaggerating. It is being cautious, it is being attentive, it is being protective. Because throughout life, protecting you has been its main task. And that task continues. Even when danger has decreased, even when life has changed, even when everything seems stable. Now notice the main learnings from this video. You may have discovered that the brain reacts before consciousness becomes aware, a process called neuroception. You may have understood that the body can enter alert mode even without real threat, because the system works with possibility, not only reality. You may have realized that the feeling of losing control can actually be excess protection, or that prolonged vigilance consumes energy and creates wear, or that the brain does not seek comfort, it seeks safety, and that safety always comes before calm. If any of these ideas made sense to you, write in the comments which concept stood out the most. It may have been a phrase, an understanding, a perception, or a turning point, because clarity often begins when we can name what is happening, and sharing that insight can help someone else understand their own experience. Now, a natural question emerges. If the brain is trying to protect, if the system remains alert, if the mind keeps monitoring, then why, at certain moments, does relaxing feel so difficult? That is exactly the question we will explore in the next video. Why does relaxing feel so difficult for your mind? Why, even when everything is calm, does the system stay alert?